Hello, everyone. Happy Friday and welcome to Ask Kate Anything. My special guest, Anna Morgan, will be along just shortly. She's having a minor technical difficulty, but I'm really excited that you're all here and going to be joining in with us today. We are going to be talking about recruiting and hiring and job searching. Oh my. So we have a lot to cover. I have some really great questions for Anna to answer, and I'm really excited for y'all to get introduced. If you haven't met Anna, welcome, Anna. It's great to see you. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me. This is the best way to wrap up my first full week of founder and CEO and full-time entrepreneur. So this is the best way to kick off the weekend. Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here, and congratulations again. This is such a big move, and even more job seekers are going to be benefiting from having you full-time in the saddle. So welcome to the show. I love that you're wearing the cobalt blue. It's a quirk color, and here I am to show up in Barbie pink for the movie premiere.
You know, I have lots of pink too. I could have done pink. Maybe we'll do that another time. So
we'll swap. Next time we'll swap.
There you go.
So I am so pleased that you are here today. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Kate Pozesnik of Quirk, just a small boutique firm that offers personal branding and career consulting. I provide resume writing, LinkedIn profile development, and career coaching around job searching and interview preparation, compensation negotiation, and more. With me today is my special guest, Anna Morgan. Anna, would you take a moment and introduce yourself and just let everyone know who you typically serve and what you offer them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Anna Morgan. I'm the founder of Career BFF. My company was born right before the pandemic. I have been known as a person who is a rescuer of dogs and careers, which is how I came to build the hashtag Career BFF. And I have been a recruiter for 20 plus years, and over time, just building a grassroots brand, many people came knocking on my door saying, hey, can you do my resume? Or, hey, I have a question about, how do I do this in my job search? And I finally paid attention to the nudge of saying yes to, stepping into the coaching aspect where I could leverage my years as a recruiter and a people over everything talent leader to help accelerate opportunities. So very similar to you, I help with resume, rewrites, definitely LinkedIn, amplifying their profiles to help them to be found first by recruiters, being a professional profile and resume reader, that's an area that I can really support job seekers with, along with, clarity, mindset, salary negotiation, and a lot of pulling back the curtain on how to work with recruiters. There are definitely nuances in managing those conversations, being relatable, being memorable. And I've just recently niched down to work specifically with people in my space, the recruiters, the sourcers, the HR and talent leaders, the compensation and HR tech folks, because those are the people that I've worked most closely with and that I get super jazzed and ignited to work on their profiles and their resume. So it's not like I'm going to say no if you're a IT director or an accountant. But, my true passion is serving the recruitment and talent industry because they've had such a hard time in the last year specifically. And I learned that through some outplacement coaching I did with recruiters and sourcers. And I was like, wow, they need just as much help and support in their job search journey. And they're so busy building companies and taking care of other people that they oftentimes neglect building their own personal brand and showcasing their leadership voice.
Well, and I think if we're all speaking the same language, right? Recruiters, job seekers, hiring managers, I think things are going to be more efficient, right? If we're all familiar with the same jargon and stuff. So I think what you're doing is really important work.
Thank you.
I'm super excited that you're here to share, some trends, best practices. And I think a lot of us are really keen to understand what goes on in the mind of recruiters. Tell us all your secrets. So
Absolutely.
let's start off.
I will try.
Okay.
I will do my best. And, I say that with a caveat that, not all recruiters are created equally. But I am on a mission to help break that stigma that, recruiters are always ghosting and it's always transactional and they
Yeah.
don't really care about candidates.
Yeah.
And that's so far from the truth. There's just a lot of nuances involved in that process. So.
Well, we're excited to learn more about it. And just to remind all of our listeners, this is a Q&A. So if you have a question either about the topic we're talking about, or maybe something that sparked an interest in something else, and you have a question, pop it in the comments. We would love to address it when we have a great stopping point. So please feel free to drop those in. Let's kick off by talking about just some current trends. What are you observing recently in the world of hiring and recruitment in general? Is there anything specific that jumps out to you?
Yeah. So, and I'm just going to preface this being neurodiverse and ADHD. I took a lot of notes. So if I'm looking down, it's just because I want to make sure that I give your listeners and my community the best information, because I'm not a good memorizer, but, I want to share some of these trends, but also back it up with some facts. So, we're in an interesting time. So if you look at the unemployment numbers and then you are on LinkedIn and you see people in extended job search and more layoffs, it can be quite confusing. So the not so great news is they say 70% of companies are going to have some kind of frost or freeze or delay in their hiring. And that's, just due to probably inflation, the ripple effect of COVID, the tech layoffs and such. But while like unemployment, has decreased slightly, I think it's like 3.6% in June. The jobless rate has fluctuated. And so it's in this kind of bouncing around place where it's like the numbers seem to look good, but it's also telling us it's a super tight market as well. So it seems like there's pockets that are growing, and then there are pockets like we saw in tech where there's still layoffs happening, that are shrinking. So, I think this ties into, again, some of the other conversations that we're going to have about the importance of building career insurance and being visible and consistently networking so that you always have some incoming opportunities. So other trends that I'm seeing is, in hiring, it is very much about rewarding current employees that have been with the organization and have gone above and beyond. So all these terms between the Great Resignation and quiet quitting, we now have like quiet hiring, which is, they say, like a new workplace trend where employees, are recognized or promoted for being loyal, for sticking things out, managing ambiguity and the fluid environments that organizations are dealing with. And that's, a relatively new trend that I'm seeing. As far as recruiting, I think what I'm seeing is more of a rise in the gig economy. And for my area, talent, HR, this year is kind of about being scrappy and innovative and kind of like just piecemealing projects and freelance work together, to maintain your skills and continue up leveling in your skill set, while you're continuing to network and set that foundation because inevitably it's going to swing again, right?
Yeah.
Recruiters and talent people are going to be in demand, and then there's going to be this huge hiring influx, hopefully by the end of the year, beginning of 2024.
Wow, this is awesome. So you just gave a ton of great stuff. And I wrote a couple notes because I wanted to go back to a couple things. You mentioned that, some industries such as tech are still seeing some big layoffs. Are there industries that you've seen that do have consistent hiring, continuing to happen, or is actually on the upswing?
My husband and I have this debate a lot because he's like, I'm having a terrible time hiring. And he's in a sales organization that has to do with the kind of construction industry.
Mhm.
And it touches tech a little bit, but there is a big boom potentially happening in hospitality, right? That got decimated during the pandemic. One of the things I read is that there's a big comeback happening in that area. So, it suggested, like, why not take advantage of that boom, right?
Yeah.
Other industries are e-commerce, because the pivot from your, brick and mortar retail customer, buying experience to online is still massively growing. Cloud computing type of opportunities, because we're, in this come back to the office. No, we're hybrid. Yes, we're remote. We want to be both. Have companies need to hire people that have the technical know-how to bridge all the different technologies that are needed to run the business. So e-commerce, cloud computing, AI obviously is going to be a big one, as that's been one of the biggest topics in 2023. And I don't think people can skill level up fast enough to take advantage of the positions that are being created as a result of AI.
Oh, I am one of those fans of AI. I'm excited about the possibilities. And I'm also of the mindset of, instead of feeling like it's something that could threaten your job, I'm looking at it as an opportunity to learn a new skill that could be beneficial in a lot of different capacities.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to go, well, actually, let's stay on AI for a hot minute.
Okay.
Because I think that this is a hot topic, and I think people are wondering, where does it leave me? But let's talk in terms of skill sets, but let's talk about, are there ways that job seekers can leverage AI as part of their job search? I'm personally not a fan of resume writing with ChatGPT or Bard. I don't think it gets the nuances that humans pick up on, but I do think there are applications, and I'm curious to know from your perspective what job seekers might be able to do with an application like ChatGPT or Bard.
Yeah, I mean, and then I want to say, from a recruiting standpoint and a hiring standpoint, this AI is actually really good for job seekers, because AI is helping recruiters minimize a lot of the traditional, administrative, heavy kind of back office operation side of recruiting, which allows us to focus more on personality traits and talking to more candidates, essentially. But as far as specific tools for job seekers in the AI space, I mean, it's moving so fast. I mean, if you just Google AI tools for job seekers, you're going to come up with 25 different types of offerings, from how to write a resignation letter to a cover letter, to elevating your resume. Teal is a great Chrome extension and tool that can help elevate the resume a little bit. But I'm like you, I don't think you want your resume to be in your voice, and you have to know that resume inside and out. And as a recruiter that interviews 30, 40 people a week, I can tell the people that have an AI generated resume when they are not even telling anything of a story that's close to what's on that piece of paper. So use that with caution. I think ChatGPT is good for people like even me, on a neurodiverse standpoint, unlocking some ideas, ways to say things differently. But new products are coming out every day. So I think it is important to use with caution, but leverage some of the tools that could be available. Timothy, that's with us in the audience, he had mentioned after my Ask a Recruiter event last night that there is another program called Claude AI that he's been playing around with. Timothy, if you want to drop that in the comments, I'm sure this community would appreciate it. And he said you could basically scan a recruiter's profile, and then it would help write some customized messages for that particular recruiter, which could help stand out. But the key with any AI is the prompts, and I think finding and learning and playing around with that to figure those out is the tricky part, right? So I grew up in, the world of Terminator. So at first I was super intimidated and like overwhelmed with the prospect of
Yeah.
this. And I do think it should be regulated in some way. So we make sure
Yeah.
that the correct information is being, communicated. But I think it is amazing, a resource for job seekers to also help minimize an administrative lift, right? Organizing your career assets, helping you redefine your story, or to elevate, tell me about yourself, and using it
Yeah.
for interview questions, interview prep, getting feedback on how you might answer interview questions is not a bad idea either.
Yeah. And I was even thinking about, you could say, what are 5 careers for someone who has a background in sales with these 8 skills, and list them out and see what different types of occupations come up. I think that's one way of kind of start generating some ideas
Right.
and brainstorming,
Mhm.
but not
Right.
necessarily giving you the final product. But AI is definitely a garbage in, garbage out type of application, where prompts are, you have to be really specific or you're not going to get what you're
Right.
looking for.
Mhm.
Timothy, thanks so much for dropping in the Claude AI. Appreciate that. Let's see. Someone else, Shannon, comments that she's been comparing Chat GPT, Claude, and Bard, asking the same questions. So far, Claude and Chat GPT are leading the pack. Okay, that's really interesting. I use Chat GPT the most, I would say, as well. But I'm still keen on getting more up to date data to pull from. And Chat GPT, I think, still is pulling from like September of 2021 or something like that. Oh, good. And we've got Teal up there too, which Anna mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Mhm.
Chat GPT limited to 2021. So maybe we'll get some more fresh data soon.
Yeah.
Well, and this is a kind of a good, I guess, pivot into just technology in recruiting in general. People usually have questions about ATS. Maybe I should start with, what are the questions that you tend to get the most about technology or applications that can be used as a part of the job search process?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, the big scary white whale tale that an ATS will automatically reject you, and there's this magic, bot and computer in the ATS that is screening out candidates. Now, as a recruiter of 20 years, I hate even aging myself. It is not doing that. One, I also sold ATS software for 8 months, one period in my career. It's not on my LinkedIn, but I know the ins and outs of how these software systems worked. I've worked on Bullhorn, I've worked on Taleo, Icems, Greenhouse, all of the Workday, all the ones that you've seen. And it just tracks your application from when you apply, if you've had a first conversation, if it's a panel interview, on through to offer. Now, most companies they use an ATS as an add-on to like an HRIS or HR performance management or payroll system. And so it's like the ATS is like an afterthought, and they're not spending the money to overly customize or make it as slick as all these like big rumors are that
Make it to be.
yeah, it's still humans that are reviewing the resumes. So all these tricks and hacks where people are putting white font on their resume, don't do that.
Yeah.
I personally don't believe in like really massively over customizing your resume for every position you apply to.
Mhm.
I like to craft a resume that is easily customizable in the first, half of the resume that,
Mhm.
can demonstrate your impact, your quantifiable results, and, tell a story in service of how you could solve a similar problem for that organization. So the questions I get are basically trying to debunk the scary things that say, I can teach you the ATS hacks. If
Yeah.
you see that from any other coaches, please run the other other way. There is not a way to hack the ATS. And I think it's important to always have a three-pronged approach. You do want to be applying, because as a recruiter, thank you, please express interest in my positions. But you also want to be building your, digital brand on LinkedIn and showcasing your leadership voice, and then be networking both digitally and in person, because conversations are the greatest ROI and fastest accelerators to getting new opportunities and potentially tapping into unposted or positions that aren't even out there yet.
So let me just pause there and repeat what you just said. Basically, you're telling people that as job seekers, networking, having conversations, informational interviews is absolutely critical to accelerating your job search and finding the right job faster. And this is something that I have to tell people all the time. You've got to talk to people. People
100%.
hire people they like, but they have to know you first to like you. And I think that's one of the big things that people get stuck on. And in regards to ATS, I'll admit, when I first started in this business, I thought it was this big, scary machine system.
Yeah.
And, over the course of the last few years, talking to experts like you about how they actually work, what I've really found is that most people that think they're having ATS processing problems are actually not writing resumes that are relevant to the job posting, or they're just not qualified. And that's why they're getting hung up. It has nothing to do with formatting at all.
Right.
That said, I keep formatting simple, but that's for ease.
Yeah, the recruiters that are reviewing your resume, and there's a human factor, right? Which there is bias, and you never know the level of intelligence of the person that's going to be viewing your resume. And so that's why it's also important to craft a resume that is relatable. Like, you want to bring it kind of way down to that like 5th to 8th grade reading level almost, because it could be a recent grad that's only been in recruiting for hot 5 minutes, or someone like me that can screen 200 resumes in an hour and a half, right? But it is important to but it also be polished enough that if a senior director looks at it, they see it as a statement of your work and your impact. So it's I understand why people get angsty about resumes, and there is so much misinformation about how to do it, which is why people hire us to help them with it. But 71% of hiring managers agree that your social media presence are effective way for them to find candidates. So don't be afraid of social job searching and having, amplifying your opportunities on places like LinkedIn. And then 50% of recruiters say that they find the best candidates through social media.
Wow. Okay. Those stats are pretty staggering, right? So I think that people should take away from this that your presence on social media matters. And most certainly what you post and how you portray yourself through social media matters, because employers are looking. So make sure that you are not only appropriate, but also relevant, that you're putting your best foot forward, that the content that you're putting out, at least in your professional platforms, is relevant to the career trajectory that you're on.
And
so I
would
that's
say,
a really good reminder.
I get questions for people who are employed and that are looking to, start building their leadership voice and brand on LinkedIn. Many people are intimidated by LinkedIn and they don't understand it. And organizations oftentimes, depending on leadership, are, in this fear standpoint, if they see candidates or associates being active on LinkedIn, there's this assumption that they're absolutely looking for a job. And most of the times because they don't understand, that LinkedIn is more than just a job board. It is a place to build community. It's a place to, be leveled up by your peers. It's a place to, access the LinkedIn learning platform to elevate your skills. And so I think it's also important, if you're looking and you're employed, check your social media policy and, proceed with caution. But the more you give, the more you're going to get. And if you are just showing up and being a good human on the platform and having, public conversations that aren't just about job searching, then you're safe. You have every right to be there. And I feel like you should engage appropriately on the platform.
So while we're on this topic about how important your online profiles and social media accounts are, because there is so much noise out there, we're competing. It is a tight market now for job seekers. What advice would you give for someone who's trying to stand out or just be seen in the crowd?
Yeah, I mean, the three-pronged approach, right? Like, you want to be applying, you want to be building your brand, and then networking in person and on the platform. So it's leveraging your relationships. And then I would say the biggest opportunity I see for job seekers as a recruiter is the lack of follow-up. And so there's a delicate balance between the person who is like the overdoer of following up, and then the
Yeah.
person that follows up once or twice and is like, I guess I'm not going to get that job. And it's like, in recruiting, timing is everything, being in the right place in the right time. And a lot of people in job search are not salesmen and women, right? They don't understand the psychology behind, building those connections. And so I want to remind everyone that it takes like 8 to 12 touch points, whether it's an email, a text, a post, a DM, a voice note, a video message, for that recruiter who's running, anywhere from 10 to 20 positions, to then be like, Timothy, he's a great help desk guy. I finally have a help desk position open, and I can call him. So it takes that repetition to get into that recruiter's kind of like, that scope that you're in top of mind. So,
Well,
um,
oh, yeah, that reminds me, because I have the follow-up piece. I do see that job seekers that I work with tend to struggle with that. And I think part of it is they're not sure what to say. They don't know what to say. They don't want to repeat the same thing that in their initial follow-up email. They don't want to be pushy, look like they're desperate. So I ended up putting together a guide that has templates. It's basically just
awesome.
messages. If you
Yeah,
want to follow up, this is the message that you do. If you haven't heard from them in 5 days, this is the new message that you send. So I just put a link up on
that's
the screen.
awesome.
If you want to download that document, you can get to it through that link. So yes, messaging, networking. Let's talk a little bit about diversity and inclusion in the hiring process. I mean, this has been something that's been top of mind for a long time. It's being talked about, but what's
Mhm.
actually being done? Are you seeing traction, or are we still spinning our wheels?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I feel like when we've had this turn in the economy, a lot of DEI leadership roles were minimized and cut back. And it's unfortunate that it's very similar to what happens to talent acquisition. It's like, organizations want to say this is really important to us, but they don't actually put the numbers behind it, right?
Yeah.
And just like talent and recruiters were, the architects of building organizations, same with, the diversity initiatives. I mean, you are seeing more like unconscious bias training. You're going to see a rise in more diverse job boards. There's more of a push for inclusive job descriptions. A lot of companies are moving to blind hiring practices. So that also would mean, a more diverse interview panels. But there's a lot of what I've experienced in my career is, you know, there's a lot of disconnect between the talent teams and the, directors, executive level folks that are managing the middle managers that are making the
Mhm.
decisions, and how this process is evolving so fast that I don't think recruiters are getting enough training, it to make that ripple effect and impact within organizations. And that's the downside of the leadership DEI roles going away, because you need both. The recruiters and talent leaders working with a diversity leader to really
Yeah.
like make that change management through organizations. I think for job seekers in a making sure that you're finding organizations that are equitable, that are, safe, is hard to do. And the most effective way to do that is going to be networking and finding people that are like you within the organization to have candid conversations with. Recruiting is a two-way street, and candidates have just as much right and opportunity to dig in and find out what they want to find out in service of them making the right decision, because a job change is a life decision. It affects your spouse, your kids, where you live, how much you commute, what clothes you wear, how many days you have to get dressed. And so, I never have taken my privilege as a recruiter, lightly in guiding people through that process. And I've left organizations in the past because I didn't feel that I was comfortable attaching my brand to, representing a company where I didn't feel that a woman of color would be treated, equitable and have the same opportunities as, a different type of candidate that would come in. So, recruiters are faced with a lot of different nuances in that regard, but I can say, I can't speak for other recruiters, but I think we all generally are focused on finding the most qualified candidate, but we do always bring diversity to the forefront to make sure that, we are representing a wide, diverse group of talent when we are recruiting, for our client or our hiring managers.
Well, and it's interesting because I've worked with a couple people in recruiting, and one thing that they did is looking for candidates in other places, non-traditional places. Instead of posting on LinkedIn, they're going to traditionally minority-based universities, for example. And I think that's wonderful. Like, go where there are diverse people, make an effort, a conscious effort to actually bring diversity into organizations. There's all these studies that prove that diversity strengthens teams, makes things happen. So, one thing, go ahead. It sounded like you wanted to say something.
Like, there's so much training that needs to be done, and within organizations in general, of how to have these conversations. And it's complex, and I say that as someone who has always been a champion of the underdog, and is always making cases for folks, because I believe candidates are more than a resume and more than a LinkedIn profile. And one of the questions you had mentioned is about soft skills. And I think that's a big thing coming into hiring in the future as well.
A question about soft skills, this comes up a few times, and I'm kind of curious to see what you think, is people who are maybe making the jump from an individual contributor role to a manager role, and they may not have formal leadership experience having managed a team. And obviously leadership it can be a soft skill too. Are there some examples of ways that people can demonstrate leadership even if they haven't managed people directly?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, like, when you think about people pivoting or taking that next step in their career, it's more about telling the story of your process, right? Soft skills are how your natural kind of personality traits, but it's how you solve problems and how you think, right? So, are you, naturally curious? It's communicating effectively, demonstrating professionalism, like building relationships. So if you can talk through, like you would use the STAR method or the PAR method, how you did that, the steps that you took, and then the results of that, that's going to build confidence and position you well. If you have used that method to create this result, that demonstrates that you would be able to take those same soft skills and take on a team of 5 people because of the results that you've created. So, I think soft skills are important because it indicates longevity for a prospective employer. Conflict resolution, commitment to the organization, which goes back to quiet hiring. And then the motivation, right? To be coachable, demonstrating humility, receiving feedback well. And so it's important that candidates are able to tell the story and showcase how they've overcome or executed conflict management within a group setting, especially if they're moving into that kind of managerial role, because that's showing that you can place yourself in the individual shoes and both understand the situations from both sides in an unbiased way.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to your earlier point about creating a resume that you can speak to. Knowing your resume inside and out, being able to take those concise statements and build a story around them in a compelling way that demonstrates you're going to be successful in the next role.
Right. And I mean, going into a next role is like, what's important is, can this person maintain relationships? Can they build relationships? Can they grow their network? I can say personally, like my own journey on LinkedIn has elevated my people's perception of me within organizations because of the network and access to people that I have through the brand that I've grown on LinkedIn. So that provides professional development opportunities. And again, it's, a lot of times in a corporate environment, that perception is people's reality, and that can definitely open new doors, new conversations, and new opportunities for people.
I mean, frankly, that's how we met, is through online. We've never met in person, and
right.
Frankly, most of the people
come down to visit you.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, we would have so much fun down here.
Absolutely.
So there was one other thing I wanted to get back to or ask you about, and someone mentioned it in a comment. And Stephen, we might need a little bit more context. He asked, is it acceptable to use customized tools for your resume, especially those with their watermark? I'm assuming he means the watermark, look at the back of the page. Do you mean tools that are just going to customize it with formatting, or do you mean something else? So if you want to drop that in the comments, we can give that some more thought. In the meantime,
sometimes if you like download a template and you don't pay for the premium or something, it might come with the watermark on it. I mean, I'm just guessing.
I think you're probably right. I stay away from those. I don't love the online tools where you fill in and it spits out a resume.
Right.
But I think, yeah, I don't love them for a number of reasons. And certainly we could address those more. We talked about ATS. ATS really isn't an issue. I think for me, it's more of how intimately do you know your own content, your resume? And if you're not, I think the process of writing a resume or the process of working with someone who's writing your resume for you, you're talking about those accomplishments over and over. You're rewriting them and editing them. You own those things, and it becomes much easier to speak about them confidently and in detail. Right. What I wanted to ask you about is something that someone mentioned in the comments. I think it may have been Timothy. Loud leaving. What is loud leaving? For those of us who are not familiar, what does it mean to leave loudly? I mean, I have some ideas, but
that is not a term that I'm intimate with, but I mean, I just imagine like Jerry Maguire, like, who's with me? I'm out. As someone who recently left a full-time corporate role, I left quietly. Like I had given my resignation maybe late February, early March, and worked out a long resignation. But I think, since the pandemic and the rise of mental health challenges for employees and leaders, that we might be seeing more of quote unquote loud leaving, where people just reach a tipping point and they're like, I'd rather be unemployed than deal with coming back into the office 4 days a week, or, just leaving on not the best terms, which I never advise, because it is a very small world, and you're going to need those relationships at some point. So I'd never recommend burning bridges. And I don't know intimately what's involved with loud quitting, but it sounds a little jolting and maybe not the best for your brand or future career. Just me.
Yeah, I think the key here is addressing the source of the stress, whether it's your current job, financial situation, whatever is compelling you to get a new job. I just lost my
Well,
train of thought.
no, that's okay. I mean, like since the pandemic, right? Like employees' values and expectations, there has been, peaks and valleys of demand for higher wages to offset inflation. Candidates are really evaluating and trying to pay attention to company culture, and that's very hard to
Mm-hmm.
quantify.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, you have just turnover. Like companies are dealing with higher percentages of turnover than they've ever had to deal with, which is hard when they're also being challenged with the hiring frost or freeze. And then,
Wow.
candidates are really looking at other ways that they can, find skill development opportunities, whether it's boot camps or certifications to make themselves more valuable or, give them access to other opportunities. So, we have a lot of, pulling and pushing in this space right now for employers. I'm sympathetic to the recruiting side, but also highly sympathetic to job seekers right now. So we're all constantly adapting to a changing landscape, and it
Yeah.
just seems to change way, faster. Where we all think we've gotten we're settling into the idea of the Great Resignation or quiet quitting, and now we have loud quitting and quiet hiring, and there's just a lot of moving parts. So.
Can hardly keep up. Yeah. So try to find a solution for the source of stress before it gets to the point where you literally feel like you're going to blow a gasket. Because that's not a fun place to be. I have been in that place. And
You spend too much
yeah.
time at work to be doing, working for an organization that there's lack of alignment or that we don't feel good about.
Mhm.
Again, for financial security reasons, I don't recommend just, blazing a
Walking.
trail behind you. But I do believe in prioritizing your career
Yeah.
planning and really getting clear about your values and what's important to you. And then just taking little micro steps each day. What can I be doing to elevate my brand or start more conversations or add depth and quantifiable content to my resume? So if and when these conversations come my way, I'm prepared. And then because again, timing is everything in any type of job search for sure.
So I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier. When we first started our conversation, we were talking about some of the trends that you're seeing in recruiting and hiring. And there is this increase in people shifting over to gig work.
Mhm.
And I'm working with a lot of people who are job seeking, but they also have a side hustle. So, from
Mhm.
a recruiting standpoint, I think one of the things people worry about is if they find out about my side hustle, am I going to lose my job? Am I even going to get hired if I have a side hustle? But, like, financially, given all of the way of the world, people have to have several streams of income. From your
Mhm.
perspective as a recruiter, and maybe what you see anecdotally amongst your peers, what is the real perception that most recruiters and hiring managers have about those who have their own side hustles? Is it a positive, a negative? I think a lot of people are kind of curious.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably depends on the person, right? Like again, like some leaders are very intimidated by LinkedIn and they don't understand it, so therefore they're going to assume and make assumptions that it's just a job board, right? And maybe I'm biased in answering this question because I've had a side hustle for several years, but
Yeah.
I think what one learns and the skills that they develop in addition to elevating their primary career but also taking initiative, going back to soft skills, that demonstrates another level of grit, resilience, integrity, forward thinking, entrepreneurial mindset. These kind of innovative, higher performing metrics that companies are attracted to. So, I would coach a hiring manager along if I was presenting a candidate that had a side hustle, not as a negative, but this is like a surprise and delight package. Not only do we
Yes.
get someone that has, 10 years of global sourcing and all these other things that you're looking for, but they also have a Shopify shop on Etsy, and they've been selling avocado sweatshirts and made $25,000. I mean, whatever it is,
Yeah.
And what they've learned through that is bam, bam, bam. And to me, that packs a greater punch and actually would potentially elevate price tag and make a candidate stand out maybe against another who has sat in middle management or not progressed in their career. But again, it's all how you package it, right? It's all how you tell that story, how that side hustle will help you solve problems for that company that you're interviewing with. Because a job description is an opportunity to help solve and, support a company and their transformative initiatives, essentially.
Yeah.
So,
Find out what their needs are, the problems that they're facing, the challenges, and then think back, what in my job history, what qualifications, skills have I accumulated that would help solve these problems? And then explain it. I mean, I think we're simplifying it, right? But it's not hard. It is kind of a formula to follow. It's really just being confident about your abilities and being able to articulate
and then I think
how
is
it
also,
aligns.
and again, setting the expectations that, when I was coaching and working full time, like I used to describe myself as a recruiter by day and job search strategist by night. And that was indeed the absolute truth. I wrote my content on the weekend. I coached my clients in the evenings and on the weekends. And just making sure that, employers know that you're not going to be maximizing their time building your side hustle. But I think anyone who is, running second and third gigs on the side is not a bad thing, but they have to feel confident in selling it that way too. And I think when you get in that space of trying to hide it, then that oftentimes can create fear or uncertainty. So just like I would talk about my ADHD in my interviews, like I like to tell my hiring manager that my ADHD is part of what makes me a really good salesperson and or recruiter, but it also means that I need to get up and move. It means that I do well with little work sprints, and then I need to go do something that, reshifts my brain before I come back to look at another 200 resumes. But it's a very personal decision for that candidate, whether they want to disclose something like that about, their maybe possible disability and or their side hustle. And that's kind of also trusting the vibe that you're picking up from the conversations or the person that you're interviewing with. And it also depends on where you are in the interview process as well.
Yeah. That's a good point. Emily mentions in the comments that there sometimes are questions on applications if you do have second employment in specific industries, and are you going to leave the position? I'm inclined to be, I guess it is, depending at the application process, it is tricky about how much you want to disclose. But for me personally, because when I job search, I am trying to find the right fit, not just a job. That I think I prefer to be honest. If you're not gonna be okay with my side hustle, I ain't giving my side hustle up.
Well,
so
exactly.
We're just not a good fit.
I've run into other talent leaders like myself. I think Phil Davis was public about this, that he, ended up not moving forward with an opportunity because they didn't want him to have his side hustle. And that can be, tricky in our space. And I was very conscientious when I was working for an employer. Like if someone from the company that I was working for said, "Hey, can you help me find a job?" The answer was absolutely no. And it's an integrity thing. And that goes back to soft skills. I will never feed where I'm being fed. And then once I transition, my responsibilities were complete, if they reach out later, then that's a different conversation. But again, not all companies think that way, and they see it as a distraction or a threat, or would be confusing to their associates or their brand. So I don't know. Yeah. I like people
No.
that have side hustles. I also love people in retail and hospitality. I think they are multidimensionally skilled people that I have a lot more opportunity to leverage in a lot of different places within organizations too.
Yeah, good to know. That's really interesting. Yeah, we've got some folks who comment that they've been in that situation. It's not a fun place to be. So, yeah, I
Oh,
get
yeah,
that.
Orlando.
I
And
love the comments
Tuesday,
have
I'm
been
going to sell
great.
some Career BFF swag here soon. So I'm working
Yes.
on that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love the dog shirts. That's super
Yeah.
fun. Guys, friends that are listening, feel free to drop questions in the comments. We are happy to talk about anything career related. If it's resumes, cover letters, networking, we are happy to help. And while we're doing that, I want to make sure that everyone is able to connect with Anna. So I've just popped up her email address. Anna, do you want to share? You've got some upcoming events. Would you like to share what those are and how folks can
Yeah,
join?
thank you. So next Thursday, the 27th, I'm hosting a Unlock LinkedIn free workshop. I already have like 90 people signed up, which is just crazy. I know, maybe 30 will show up when 90 are scheduled, but
Yeah.
I to celebrate kind of this launch and all the support that I've gotten in making this transition. I want to give back to my community. And we're going to talk about, 5 changes that you can make to your profile immediately to really be found first and attract either ideal candidates and or opportunities to your profile. That's the biggest thing. So if you go to my featured section on my page, on my personal page on LinkedIn, you can find that event as well as opt into my newsletter, which will be a more robust, longer form piece of content that I will be firing up here in the next couple of weeks, probably bi-weekly to start, so I can ease into that, but a place where I can be giving back pointers on how to, just level up your job search, and along with building community and other fun announcements and events that I'll be hosting later this year.
Y'all, if you are not already following Anna or not on her email list, you want to get there because she, if you haven't already been able to tell, she is engaging, very informative, up to date, and also lots of fun and spunky. So definitely get on her email address. If you would like to connect with me and either get a hold of those networking messages or other resources, or you want to get some time on my calendar to talk about a career pivot, you are welcome to email me, or you can also hit me up on LinkedIn.
Kate also has a store on Instagram. She's got some good resources available in her IG store too. I saw that last night. I was like, oh, I need to get on that. So.
It's all in here. So I popped that link up for a hot minute. And if you missed either my email address or Anna's, the recording's going to be popped up in here on LinkedIn. So you'll be able to reference those as well. Is there anything? We've got a few minutes left. It doesn't look like I have any questions that are pressing right now. Is there anything that you would, it could be a general tip, it could be an observation that you've made recently, anything that you would like to leave with the audience or share, or maybe something they need to know about job searching moving forward the rest of 2023?
Absolutely. I mean, first I want to shout out Orlando Haynes, Emily, Timothy that are here that I can see in the comments. Definitely follow Orlando. He's got a great Career Talks podcast. Emily is a vigilant job seeker who's working really hard to find her next dream job. Same with Timothy, who's helped transitioning help desk IT support professional. So thank you for being here, guys. The biggest thing that I've noticed in the last 2 weeks, because I've been working a relatively entry level role, so I'd say 1 to 3 years of experience, and so I want to kind of challenge everyone that's here to be a career BFF to someone who's recently graduating or within that first year of navigating this job search journey. It is very evident to me and sad in one way that students are not getting the right information as they're transitioning out of college on building a resume. I've seen a wide variety of lacking capitals and formatting issues and content in the resume that starts with and
Mhm.
tenses all over the place. That to me was a big theme where I'm like, okay, it is our mission. Those of us that are a little further along in our careers,
Mhm.
seek out a recent grad, offer to look at their resume, go through it with them, and give them, some insight and best practices on just presenting that document is a statement of how you work. And if
Mhm.
again, this might be harsh, but if you're showing up as a hot mess on a piece of paper, the
Mhm.
recruiter is going to question, if I have to like do all this work to make you look presentable on paper, like, can I trust that you
Yeah.
will, be able to manage the job duties that I'm looking to
Right.
fill? So that's the other
Yeah.
thing to remember is, while I don't want people to get in paralysis analysis with executing their job search, because I believe in
Mm.
messy action over perfect action, you just want to be cognizant of how you show up in the world, from
Yeah.
social media to your written communications to your follow up messages. That those all communicate, who you are as a person and an employee. And those are being, subconsciously sometimes factored in to, do I feel confident in putting my name on that candidate? And are they showcasing all of the potential skills that they have through, going through the interview process, and
Right.
that comes down to simple things like, instead of asking your recruiter, like, oh, what are the email addresses of the person I interviewed with? Have you checked the website first to see
Right.
if you can find it there? And that comes down to soft skills again, and like emotional intelligence. Sometimes it's just important to pause and think through, like, can I Google this or find it out first
Yeah.
before I'm, asking these questions that are something that I could demonstrate my resourcefulness
Right.
to find, and then, send those follow up messages and thank you messages.
Yeah, I love that. We have a couple questions I'd love for you to address before we wrap up. This is a good one. Would you include, in years of experience, maybe for a skill or whatnot, would you include your university schooling? So, for example, maybe you're a business major in management. Would you use the 2 years that you studied management solely as part of your education, as part of your years of experience, or no?
If you're just starting out of school, is that what you're asking, or just in general?
It's a question that Timothy popped up. Just says, question, when asks for years of experience, do you include university in that?
I mean, so employers do like value volunteer experience and any internships, and like I love people that worked in hospitality or retail while they were in school. Like, I think that shows a just different level of work ethic sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think I would preface it with, full-time professional work is, 3 years working full-time. But prior to getting into full-time work, I worked, part-time while I was in school. I think it depends on the type of position that you're applying for.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think about like why the recruiter would potentially ask that, but maybe to the point where I value I find it helpful and credibility building for candidates that have done some work during school. So,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I often tell people projects, if you did some special projects or personal
mhm,
initiatives, those are
mhm.
all great things to use as experience.
Examples. And that
Um,
goes back to like how you work and how you solve problems.
Exactly. Now, things are at a lull a little bit now. We're in
Mhm,
summer with hiring
mhm.
not being, super busy. When should we anticipate things to start picking up a little bit and the hiring to increase? Do you have
So
any
this is where
clues?
I'm a little bit different in my thinking.
Mhm.
And so right now, August, September, October is an excellent time to be putting your foot on the gas with your job search. And here is why. So I worked agency recruiting for 10 plus years. That means that I worked with corporations paid me to find top talent for them. And that was ranging from entry level to executive level. And the months that I had the greatest deals that I would close would be in November and December. The reason being is that companies have yearly budgets and they get really motivated at the end of the year to spend their budget. So if they hadn't spent the summer interviewing because they were vacationing, they get really motivated in the fall. So job seekers who are networking, getting visible on LinkedIn, maybe applying for positions, maybe you don't get it, but you're still maintaining that relationship with those recruiters and those target companies, don't stop. Those are going to come back into play. I also believe if you have that brand recognition with your target companies, that's when that something's going to hit and that recruiter is going to be like, oh my gosh, I have this position coming. Because we want to use the candidates that we've already talked to. We do not like starting over. So if I've spent 30 to 45 minutes to an hour getting to know you, or I've taken you through a process and maybe you're second or third, like you can bet that most recruiters are trying to champion you to other departments or hiring managers within the organization if you got that far in the process. So plant the seeds now and trust where you traditionally think things die and go underground in the fall. I feel like it is an awesome time to like bloom and really accelerate opportunities, because then your competition like quadruples after the first of the year, because everyone's like, I'm just going to wait till the first of the year to get a job. I don't like that.
I hear that a lot. And honestly, my busiest time of the year is August through December. So that aligns up perfectly with what you're seeing in terms of hiring trends. So I think right now, the takeaway here is start working on your materials, start having conversations, informational interviews.
Yeah. And Emily asked, do we keep sending out resumes now? Yes. Yeah. I mean, I would definitely keep your foot on the gas. And I believe those conversations and experiences that you're having now, if you're diligent in your follow-up and tracking like who you're talking to, who you're building relationships, they can come back and be great ROI for you as you get closer to the end of the year. Now, again, we're in a weird economy. Things could change a little bit, but I still think I know enough of working with enough organizations that it's a very constant, consistent motivation that they're like, oh crap, I need to fill this position before the end of the year. And what's great about that is they also minimize the interview process, which means it's not going to draw out, being a 6 to 8 week type of thing, because they need to move someone, through the process so they can keep that budget for the following year.
I love that. That's a great tip. Jeremy brings up a great question. How important is a one-page resume given the insane market with thousands of people competing for the same roles? Is brevity in the form of a one-pager versus 2 or 3 king or queen?
I mean, I am literally a professional resume reader. And I mean, while I don't appreciate a 5 to 10 page resume, depending on where you are in your career and how complex your job function, title, and industry is, what I care about is the content and the results that you've created and the impact that you've made, and that it is demonstrated in that piece of content enough to want to motivate your reader to pick up the phone or send an email to learn more about you. That is all. Your resume is a marketing document. Don't get hung up on the pages. This is another thing that people get stuck in analysis paralysis. And it's actually a way of avoiding, fear, essentially. They're like, well, I'll reformat the resume. I'll spend all this time like redoing the resume, when in action, it's like self-sabotage in not taking action of showing up on LinkedIn or networking or doing those informational interviews. It's like, let me hide behind the resume on this little laptop. And, if I get the words just right and the timing and it down to one page, that will solve everything. And in fact, that's not the answer. So again, messy action over perfect action. Again, I don't love reading novels, but I don't want you to limit showcasing your impact by trying to squish it all in one page.
I love that as a note to end on. what did you say? Messy
Action is better
action
than no
versus
action.
right versus no
Yeah.
action. So I
Yeah.
love that. I think that's a really good. I mean, I think that can be applicable in many areas of our lives, but certainly with professional networking and job searching, you've just got to start
And
somewhere
there's
and
no,
do
yeah,
it.
you just have to start. There's no
Yeah.
perfect silver bullet exact way to do this, but
Yeah.
you are going to learn as you're going through this process. And,
Okay.
for people that have been in extended job search, like, you can talk about, like, yes, maybe I haven't worked for X amount of time, but here's what I've learned and the things I've
Mm-hmm.
done through my job search journey. I've, connected with X number of people. I've attended this many events. I, completed this many LinkedIn learning
Yeah.
courses. I volunteered at this nonprofit, and those actions also speak to your skills and how you might come into an organization. So you are actually leveling up as you're going through a job search journey.
Yeah.
People don't like
Oh,
to think about that as a skill leveling up experience, but it 100%
yeah.
is. And
It
you're
really
building
is.
career insurance for yourself and positioning yourself to have a stronger foundation to protect yourself from being unprepared, where you might
Right.
find yourself in that situation from a recent layoff or similar. You're going to continue taking those networking actions so that, you know, you'll be protected.
Oh, that's great. No, I really appreciate that. Anna, it has been such a delight
So much
to have
fun.
you in
Thank
this
you.
studio with me. So, thank you so much for your time. And those of you who are listening, I am very excited to announce that the next Ask Kate Anything will be on Friday, August 18th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, our usual time. My special guest in our next visit will be Annette Bond of Definitive Style. She is such a treat. She's a hot pink gal and so has a place in my heart for sure. But we are going to be talking about career couture, how your style can give you success. So I'm super excited about that. I'm going to be posting the event here shortly. So make sure that you check back and register for that if you'd like to join us for how to style your personal brand and how
That's
it can help
awesome.
you accelerate your career. So I'm pumped.
I will definitely
Again,
be there for that because
yay!
how you show up on Zoom or Teams or wherever, but also, I mean, the rise of in-person interviews. That's a whole nother
Yes.
conversation. I found myself when I was scheduling interviews, I'm like, how do I do this again? Like,
Yeah.
what do I need
Yeah.
to remind candidates to do and say when they get there and be prepared? So that's a whole another conversation, but it does matter for sure. So that's exciting.
Well, join us in the 18th of August. We'd love to
Yeah,
have you there. And
awesome.
for any remaining questions, y'all, feel free to relook at the recording. Here's Anna's email address one
Yeah,
more
send me an
time.
email.
We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah,
If you have questions, reach out. And again, Anna, thanks so much for your time on a Friday, and congratulations again on
thank you.
and welcome to the world of entrepreneurship and small
Yes,
business
I'm so glad to
ownership
have
full
people like
time.
you in my
Full
corner.
time.
So thank you.
All right, everyone, have a terrific weekend, and we'll see you at the next Ask Kate Anything on the 18th of August. Cheers.
Bye.